We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
The truth is out there.
I want to believe. But you were singing the X-Files theme to me, and it took me about 5 minutes for me to realize what the hell you were doing. Because you're such a great singer. You're so great.
Dude, I am so excited for this series.
Meow,
I'm so
meow,
excited.
Meow, 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 meow. Scully.
That's right. Scully. Yeah.
Scully.
Yeah. We're going to hear some very familiar names. Dude, the X-Files, I mean, I think that anybody who's even like vaguely around our age was so influenced by the X-Files as a kid. It was such a cultural phenomena.
Yeah, dude.
And I mean, this is, dude, and the quintessential X-Files story is aliens.
Yeah, yeah. X-Files, super, super important show. I mean, when I watched it when I was just a little kid, and that's why I started smoking, you know? Smoking Man was fucking awesome, so, you know, had to...
Cigarette smoking man.
Yeah, lit up every day. 8-year-old, 9-year-old, you know? I made people call me the Smoking Man.
Did you actually?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm kidding.
I mean, I would have bought that. I would have bought that. You were the baby MacGyver.
I was the baby MacGyver. That's true. I did make everybody call me baby MacGyver. I was gonna meet Gillian Anderson once at a Star Trek convention.
Really?
Yes, I was gonna meet her. That's why we went. We were so excited. And then she wasn't there. She didn't go.
That sucks.
I don't know why. I'm not holding it against her after all these years.
I mean, you should.
It's not like
it sounds
it's
like
not a big deal. Yeah, it's not like I think about it a lot, you know. But yeah, instead though, I got to meet the Ferengis from Star Trek: The Next Generation. I got to meet.
Yeah, I knew you met them.
Ram and Nog, the actors. They were super nice and awesome.
That's
and
cool.
so sweet. We got to talk to them for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was this?
Oh my god, I think I might have been like maybe 11 or 12.
Okay, so that would be what, 80, 84, 96? Maybe?
Maybe. I mean, I can't guarantee. I could have been any age, but that's
Something
my
like
first
that.
encounter with extraterrestrial creatures, and it was quite pleasant. I got their autographs and everything.
So your first encounter was with the Ferengis?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah,
Yep.
I see that. I mean, I didn't watch much X-Files when I was a kid because
Really?
we didn't get Fox.
Oh, well, I got Fox at my dad's house and at my grandma's house. The house I grew up in, yeah, we also didn't have Fox.
Yeah.
So I had to get it where I could get it. But
Right.
that's too bad, yeah.
It was always one of those things where when we went on a vacation where they had cable, because we didn't have cable, we only had three
Right.
channels, ABC, NBC,
CBS.
We didn't have NBC. We had ABC, CBS, and PBS.
Okay.
And then sometimes Fox, depending on how the weather was, but it was really inconsistent. So anytime we went on like a vacation or something, I would always try to watch the X-Files. And I remember being terrified of the X-Files most of the time.
So
It was
scary.
so creepy. It was so great.
It was so scary.
But like I was still, you couldn't avoid the cultural impact that was the X-Files.
Still, even if you didn't have Fox,
Yeah,
you couldn't
like
avoid it.
I saw maybe 10 episodes during the show's entire primetime run, and I still like knew all about it. Also, because I was really into it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and they were that was the first time I experienced somebody kind of tapping into that thin veil between like real, quote unquote, like real incidents and paranormal stuff where you know they did talk about like, oh, UFO crashes here and there and Kecksburg and whatever like that, and so you were like, oh wow, they're referencing these things that I actually know and I have books on as in this fictional show, but they're doing it with the backdrop of things that I believe are factual. You know, it was really cool to see that for the first time.
X-Files wasn't a documentary.
Yes, there's a documentary and the events
What?
happened in real time.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Chris Columbus, one of the greatest documentarians of our time.
Yeah, duh. Anyway, we're slaying monsters. We got
That's
Matt
right.
across the table.
Yo.
I'm EJ. And today we're going to talk about...
We are going to talk about, you ready for this? In the late 1940s, a slew of news reports started coming out of New Mexico. According to their sources, some named and some anonymous, something mysterious had crashed in the desert. Almost immediately, the site was swarmed by military technicians who salvaged the debris and carted it off to a classified government facility. This included mysterious pieces of metal, artifacts with undecipherable writing, and mutilated corpses, far too small and improperly proportioned to be human. Within days, government agents locked the story down, spreading misinformation and lies to keep the truth under wraps. That an alien spacecraft had crashed and been recovered in the New Mexico desert. That's right. We are talking about the Aztec UFO crash.
What?
Ha-ha!
I thought you were going to say Roswell.
You thought I was going to say the R word.
Yeah.
Unless you looked at the episode title.
Yeah, I definitely did. Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, you fooled everybody there.
Well, here's the thing, though. We are going to talk about Roswell. Because the alleged UFO crash at Roswell has become so mixed up with the incident at Aztec that it's going to take several series for us to actually untangle the two and finally talk about them both. So first, we're going to start with Aztec, and then we're going to talk about Roswell, and then we're going to talk about Hangar 18 and the alleged government conspiracy, and Area 51 and the alien autopsy and all of those wonderful things, but we're going to start with Aztec.
Woohoo! When the hell did Aztec happen? Is
Aztec,
that before Roswell?
1 year after Roswell.
See, this is crazy. Okay.
So we're not going chronologically, but there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And it'll become clear as we move along. This is a series, I have just been so excited to do this. You know, because of the nature of my work in film, I have a lot of periods of quiet and then a lot of periods where I'm very busy. And so when I'm doing research and writing the scripts for these series, I tend to write them far ahead of time. Sometimes, a couple of months ahead, just to make sure that I have a backlog for when I get busy, like I'm really busy right now. And this one I wrote, I don't remember when I wrote this script a couple of months ago, and I've just been sitting on it, waiting and getting more and more excited to finally jump into this. And as all of the news started to come out about like the bodies from Nazca and all of that stuff, I was just like, oh my God, I have hours and hours of material here. Just wait. We're going to talk about it. And so finally we get to start talking about this. It's going to be so great.
Yeah, he's super excited, you guys. Like, he cornered me. I was having a peaceful moment on the couch this morning with the cats, you know, just doing my thing. And he corners me and starts screaming at me about aliens. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because he's just so fucking excited about this.
This is life in our house.
This is what I have to deal with, everybody.
The cats listen to me.
You know what's amazing, though?
What?
I've never heard of Aztec. I've been with you for a long time, and I've never heard of the Aztec crash.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about them here. Number one, the Aztec UFO crash was a complete hoax. Complete. Fabricated by two con men who duped a journalist named Frank Scully in the late 1940s, early 1950s. And Scully, of course, we know that name from the X-Files. Dana Scully, the name is taken from Frank Scully, this journalist. Frank Scully, he published the account of this crash first in a column in Variety, and then in his most famous book, Behind the Flying Saucers. And although the entire account was disproven by the mid-1950s with criminal accusations and convictions, the story has become inexorably entangled with the story of the Roswell UFO crash. And together, these two accounts make up the backbone of the legend of flying saucer crashes, alien autopsies, and government conspiracies that define so much of modern UFO lore.
Man, when you muddy the waters with facts, When you muddy the facts, basically,
Right.
you can really create a good story that people believe, no matter what you throw at them.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to start talking about that too. But that it is the most incredible way to utilize misinformation, where you take something that is mostly true, right? Like has a basis somewhere, and then you start to throw misinformation in, just dribble it in a little bit, and then it starts to spread, and soon no one knows what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
And it is a very real tactic in counterintelligence. It's something that legitimately happens. And in the future, we are going to talk very specifically about how that influenced the reports that came out of Area 51. So, I have a mountain of sources for this series, but my primary sources will be Frank Scully's 1950 book, Behind the Flying Saucers, and J.P. Kahn's articles published in True magazine. Those are titled The Flying Saucers and the Mysterious Little Men and Flying Saucer Swindlers. For this episode, I'll be using an article from the Texas Co-op Power website titled Oil Field Mysticism, written by Clay Kopidge. So we're going to start out not in New Mexico, but in Texas. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, most of Texas is still what we call open range. That means that cattle could freely roam and graze, sometimes wandering across people's property lines to get food. Also called free roaming or free ranging, this created a variety of complications, as you'd kind of expect. So what would happen is cattle might overgraze in one area and leave it completely barren. And then it became hard to tell whose cattle were whose. And so you started branding them. Branding starts to become a very common practice. So you're like, no, that one's mine. Because unbranded cattle, which were called mavericks, could be scooped up and branded by anyone who found them.
Oh, wow. I didn't know Maverick came from that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
And you see a great example of the theft of unbranded cattle in the incredible Amazon show, The English.
Oh, yeah.
With Emily Blunt.
That show is so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Dude, that puts the whole Mel Gibson movie Maverick into context for me. It
kind of does, right?
So he's not like a card sharp. He's actually an unbranded cow.
I think
That's
that
what it
I think
means.
it was more that he was a vagrant wanderer. But
Oh.
but yeah, I mean, he might have been a cow all along. That does change the way I look at Maverick.
Yeah, I think he's a cow.
It's really remarkable that they let him on that riverboat, considering he was a cow.
I think we need to see that movie again, but have a cow be what's the word?
Cut into
Cut
it
into-
instead of him.
On Mel Gibson's face the whole time. I think that would be an amazing movie. Okay, I'm too literal for this. Continue.
So ranches began hiring cowboys to keep their herds safe and move them from place to place to prevent overgrazing. You see a great example of this in Open Range, the movie with Kevin Costner.
Oh yeah, that was a good movie.
These cowboys were tasked with stopping rustlers from stealing and rebranding the cattle and preventing wild animal attacks, just kind of keeping them safe as they were out on the open range. And then once or twice a year, the cowboys would stage a roundup. And in the roundups, they would sort out the unbranded young and mark them. And then they would separate the mature cows for sale and slaughter. By the 1870s or so, barbed wire had been invented. And this became a revolutionary thing for these cowboys, these ranchers. Because for the first time, it allowed ranchers to fence off their land and keep their cattle safe. It was cheaper than keeping cowboys, and all of a sudden you start to see the herding jobs decline because the ranchers are enclosing their pastures and keeping the cows in there.
Man, it's like AI. Damn barbed wire. Coming for our jobs.
Just to come for our jobs,
For our
barbed
damn
wire.
jobs, barbed wire.
Well, and you just got to fight back against the barbed wire,
Yeah,
right?
shoot it. Shoot at it.
You know what's funny
Stab
is that they kind of did fight back against the barbed wire. So fencing initially was kind of indiscriminate. So the ranchers would just kind of set up their property wherever the hell they wanted it to be. And didn't really regard pesky little things like, I don't know, land ownership. So in Texas at the time, if you fenced in someone else's property as part of yours, it was pretty easy for you to just be like, oh yeah, that was mine the whole time. And then you just expanded your ranch into their land.
Damn.
Yeah.
Rude.
Yeah. This became so bad that it led to the fence cutting wars, which was a conflict between ranchers. And although it's kind of got a cute name, it was so intense that it's estimated to have caused around $20 million in damages and killed at least 3 people, including a Texas Ranger.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Pretty intense.
Yeah. Because you would just go and you would be like, oh, you fenced in my land. And you would cut their fence, and then you would fence in their land, and then they would cut yours. And eventually you start shooting people.
Dag nabbit.
Yeah.
Reminds me of Outer Range.
Outer Range. Another
That's
excellent show.
Excellent show.
Again on Amazon.
Yes.
Yes. Phenomenal.
They don't pay us to say this. Those are just good fucking shows.
No, they're just good shows. Jeff Bridges, damn. Oh, man. So good.
Is it
No,
Jeff
not
Bridges?
Not Jeff Bridges. What's his name? Hellboy. No,
No,
not Hellboy.
not even him. Josh Brolin?
Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin.
Yes.
Josh Brolin. Excellent. We got there eventually.
Whoever he is.
Obviously, they don't pay us to say this because I don't know anything.
You know who's the best in that show is Mel Gibson.
In what, Outer Range?
Yeah.
He's not in Outer Range.
Oh, okay.
Is he the range?
He's the range. He's the cows.
He's the cows.
He's all the cows.
He's just that steer head that the one guy has on his wall. Yeah,
Yes.
it's great.
Yes.
Okay. So eventually, the government stepped in and made fence cutting illegal and punishable with a 5-year prison sentence. And this ended the fence cutting wars. But a new stress arose as a result of this. Because now that your cattle and your land were confined, resources needed to be managed properly in order to keep your herd healthy. Because since it's not open range anymore, you can't just move them when they overgraze. And when water dries up, you need to be able to find a new water source. Resource management is now a priority for ranchers. And do you know what the most important resource was on the ranch?
Besides water?
No.
It was water.
Water.
Okay.
Yeah, water.
Yeah.
New wells were drilled, but water was really frustratingly hard to find. Because, believe it or not, there's something else in the ground surface across all of Texas.
Texas tea.
That's right. Black gold.
Black gold.
In 1902, rancher William Thomas Wagoner tried to drill a well on his property. But much to his dismay, he didn't strike water. Instead of nice, clean, pure drinking water, oil started bubbling up out of the ground. And he later said, "I wanted water, and they got me oil. I tell you, I was mad clean through. We needed water for ourselves and our cattle to drink."
Wow. You
Yeah.
can't eat money. But he had to be rich after that, right?
It's not even that. The thing is, at the time, oil had no use. Not that. Because this is 1902. Like, we've just barely started having cars.
Okay. So there's not
Trains
really a
are
big
still
demand.
powered by coal.
Okay, so the demand isn't there yet for all that.
There's not demand.
Okay.
Less than 10 years later, William Wagoner set up the Wagoner Refinery and began extracting oil. He was one of the very first oil barons in the country. By the time he died, he'd paid for the construction of several buildings of the Texas Women's University in Denton and tried to buy the racehorse Man of War for $500,000.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
He made his fortune off of oil. See, it should come as no surprise that the Western world was just beginning to need it. The automobile industry really started in the 1900s, with cars becoming affordable. And alongside this, the increasing industrialization, you have power plants, factories, they need cheap, local sources of petroleum for power. And the culture of Texas changed basically overnight. Where oil had up until this point been seen as a nuisance, something that you didn't want on your property, it now means riches beyond a meager rancher's wildest dreams. To strike oil was a life-changing event, not just for yourself, but for the generations to come after you. So it's no surprise that everybody wanted to find a surefire way to locate black gold.
So all these ranchers were now looking all over their property for oil crazy.
Bet. Yeah. And it's so crazy because literally a couple of years before you'd strike oil, you'd be like, oh man, this ruined this land. And now you're like, this is what I want. And as can be expected with any valuable resource, the rush to find oil was fraught with fraudsters.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you have all kinds of outrageous claims now. And one of these was a very, very particularly shrewd huckster named Charles Rolfe. And he made headlines when he claimed that his invention could find oil on your property for you. See, Rolfe's invention, he called it a doodlebug.
Ah, yes.
And it is just a forked stick that you carry around your property. And inside the stick is some type of trade secret that wiggles the stick when it detects oil below the ground. Now, court papers from 1936 described it like this. As far as I know, the gentleman who owns it says it is a secret. He claims it is an invention of his own, which he doesn't want to reveal to anybody. But the tube proper, what's supposed to do this exploring, is about 6 inches long, and in this tube has a secret, which he has never revealed to anybody. And it is scaled on both ends, and at one end there is an opening to attach this fork. And the fork is about 15 or 16 inches long, and it has 2 handles to it. A man takes this fork in both hands with the tube up and holds it over the land or lease, and by some way he can tell whether the land has potential oil-bearing possibilities or whether it is dry.
Interesting. I mean, the doodlebug is, it's interesting that he changed the name to make it seem like it's his invention when really it's like an old...
Oh, yeah.
It's totally an old invention.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a dowsing rod.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, they've been around since like the 1500s, I think.
They've been around kind of as long as human history has existed.
Long time.
Yeah,
long time.
I think of them as a especially goofy form of pseudoscience.
Yeah.
Dowsing was historically often used to find water, but you would also use it to find like precious metals, and some people have even claimed to find bodies using dowsing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's interesting.
like corpses.
That's interesting.
From the beginning, it's always had a mysticism to it. Enough so that Martin Luther banned it from the church for being an occult ritual.
For real.
Yeah.
They called it like satanic.
Oh, German Jesuit Gaspar Schott called it rather satanic and insisted that the devil was the one who like grabbed a hold of the rod and was moving it around.
See, this is the thing I don't get about that though, because it's like, if the devil is helping you find water,
right,
and helping you find metal and bodies in the ground or whatever,
yes,
the devil's being good and helpful.
True.
So, like, maybe he's your buddy.
Devil's always your buddy.
Maybe not hate on the devil.
Yeah, the devil's like, oh, there's water over here. And God's like, don't listen to him.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm really thirsty. He's like, it's right here.
Yeah. If I were them, I'd spin it and say, oh, the Lord has come down and has given you this divine
yeah, why wouldn't you just say that? You're just like, yeah, Jesus is leading you. I don't know.
Yeah, co-op that. Make that about God. Instead, you have like the devil helping you out, and like
Seriously.
that's a bad thing. Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know, man. I have memories as a kid doing dowsing on the
Yeah,
property.
I know you used to do it on your property.
Yeah. Well, not like all the time, but yeah, we would like do it and walk around the yard and try to find. And I have pictures of my great grandfather also dowsing.
Right.
From like the
40s?
30s and 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have pictures of him dowsing. It was a thing. It was definitely like a popular thing.
Did you find water when you did it?
Oh, well, I mean, so we have 2 wells on the property.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, no, we have 3 wells on the property, and we walked around, and of course I walked over the well and the thing went down toward the water.
Yep.
Because I knew where the wells were.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it just, and it's a micro movement.
Well, yeah, it's funny because when you're holding a rod, a stick, something like that, I'm really proud of us for avoiding all the sexual innuendo.
Wow, we
Yeah.
really have.
We've done a good job.
We?
I feel like we've matured.
So mature.
So when you're holding this rod in your hand,
Yeah.
and
You don't hold it very tightly.
no, you hold it loosely because you don't want to constrict it.
Yeah, exactly.
But like when you hold it, you're talking about something like he says it's 18 inches long, something like that.
It's a big one, yeah.
And the movements, the microscopic movements that you do with your hand are multiplied 2, 3, 4 times
right.
across the length of the rod.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a fishing rod where you don't need to move your wrist very much with a fishing rod, but you get a lot of action on the rod tip.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's like super important.
Totally.
A point.
Yeah. I by the way, before we leave German Jesuit Gasper shot, I just want to say that if I write an autobiography, I think I'm going to title it Rather Satanic.
Rather satanic. I like that. That is you. You're rather satanic.
While the actual practice is ancient, our modern interpretation of dowsing comes from the 16th century in England by the way of Germany. See, mining was on the rise in Britain at the time, thanks to the growing popularity of tin, and the mines in Cornwall and Devon were expanding very rapidly. And so German miners had become experts at extracting materials like copper, zinc, and silver from their countryside. And England, in desperate need of experienced workers to keep up with the demand, they contracted a bunch of German miners to help them. And now the German miners came over and they employed the use of a forked stick called a Schlagruth, or striking rod, Schlagruth. This was mistranslated by the Cornish workers as Duschen, from the word duschen, or to strike, Duschen. And when spoken with a Cornish accent, the word Duschen became dusing, which of course became the dowsing rod that we hear today.
Right. We put our Texas twang on it. Dowsing.
Dowsing? I'm gonna go dowsing.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's a Texas accent. I am sorry to all of our Texas listeners. I don't fucking know.
I just have like a generic American
Yeah.
South accent that has like, in all honesty, most of my American South comes from Val Kilmer playing Doc Holliday in Tombstone.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the accent I do. And then it covers everything from like, I don't know, Georgia to New Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's good enough, right?
Good enough.
Yeah.
During the Enlightenment, scientists began examining dowsing, trying to determine what, if any, effect the rod had on the minerals below the ground, or vice versa. William Price wrote a possible explanation in 1778. He imagined that certain minerals probably emitted particles that floated up into the atmosphere, and those particles were absorbed by the porous wood of the stick and caused it to get heavy and dip downwards. This is, of course, completely wrong.
If that were true, then all the trees would be falling down
Right? Yeah.
over all these mineral veins.
That's why branches fall to the ground.
Oh my God! Wow! You've just proved it.
There you go. The Society for Psychical Research, who we talked about before in our Fox Sisters episode, they also examined dowsing. And they presumed that the stick had nothing to do with it at all, but that it was merely a trained miner making observations about the land around themselves, and then making involuntary movements of the rod that validated those observations.
Oh.
Just like you did when you walked over where you knew a well was.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
This is also wrong, but paved the way for the truth, which is the ideomotor effect and confirmation bias. So you might recall the ideomotor effect from our series on the Fox Sisters and the practice of table turning. In short, the action of not doing anything has a tendency to cause your body to do something. It's really, really hard to like stand completely still or hold your arms completely still and not move. And then, as we said, you have a long forked twig and that just enhances all of the little tiny microscopic movements that you're making.
Yeah, imagine that, and imagine like, okay, you're really close to a planchette on a Ouija board.
Yep.
And you're still moving that.
You're
trying
moving it,
not to
right.
move it, but you are moving
You are.
it. Imagine how amplified that is when you have all that space.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or like we talked about table turning, people would move tables across a room. You know? Modern science has debunked dowsing again and again, but that doesn't stop mystics from using it even today.
Why should it?
Modern dowsing often employs a pair of L-shaped metal rods, which are held parallel to the ground, and apparently cross over each other when the wielder finds water or gold or whatever.
Or a ghost or whatever.
Well, yes, some of them do find ghosts. That's one of the claims now, I guess. People will also use a pendulum attached to the end of a string, which swings over whatever you're looking for.
Right.
Completely disproven as the ideomotor effect. And it's not hard to disprove either. In 1990, the German Society for Scientific Investigation of the Parasciences did a double-blind study with James Randi. Do you know about this?
No.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you encountered this in your research. They buried pipes 50 centimeters or about 20 feet underground.
Oh yeah, I know about this.
Yeah, and then over the course of 3 days, they had dowsers douse the area. And while they were working, the researchers redirected flows of water in the pipes different ways. And the dowsers tried to determine where the water was and where it was flowing. And no surprise, those results were no better than random chance. But this doesn't stop charlatans from trying to profit off the uninitiated. And so you can find official copper dowsing rods on Amazon for upwards of $20, which is a real fucking ripoff, right?
Well, yeah. Why aren't we doing this, by the way? Slaying
Monsters branded dowsing rods.
We'll just say we won't find anything. But so there's no lying.
I think our brand should be Random Chance dowsing rods.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
If you want to try dowsing, you don't even need rods. Just point at a random stretch of ground and you'll probably be about as right as anybody else.
Especially if you're using context clues.
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Which I think is what the Germans were doing. You know, the Germans who were experienced miners were walking around kind of being like, I think the minerals would be here. And then the rods didn't do anything. It was more the fact that like you have a lifetime of experience as a miner. You know what you're looking for.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Speaking of charlatans, let's get back to Charles Rolfe. In 1935, Charles Rolfe and his oil-finding dowsing rod, which he called a doodlebug, wound up in court. Rolfe claimed that the Pearl Oil Company had used his invention to find oil, and he hadn't been properly compensated for their success. So, basically, he gave them a magic device to find oil, and because they did indeed find oil, he should get a cut of their profits. Now, they claimed his device was useless junk, which it was, and he deserved nothing. And this is a landmark case in terms of pseudoscience. Because if the jury had awarded Rolfe, they would have imbued sham devices with real legal power.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, think about the precedents that would have been set by this decision. It would be devastating for science.
Oh yeah.
Like, imagine if you had a rock that you claimed could heal somebody, and you gave it to them when they were sick, and then they got better. You could claim it was because of the rock and charge for the use of the rock, just like a doctor.
Right, legally, you had
Legally,
that right.
you could do that because it was
Right.
the magic rock that healed them.
I mean, you can still do that today, but like, it doesn't have the weight
Right.
that a doctor would have.
Well, this is the precedent case.
Right. Then and that's why we don't have, it doesn't carry that kind of weight. But I
Exactly.
think that it would if this had gone the other way.
Yes.
That's really scary.
It is. Yeah, it's really scary. Luckily, upon reviewing the evidence, the jury fell on the side of reason. And they concluded that dowsing rods did not hold any magical power, and that the divination came from the dowser themselves. Therefore, Rolfe's rod was inconsequential, Something that no man wants to hear, especially from a small group of Texans.
That's right. Well, everything's bigger in Texas, so the curve is you know.
Yeah. They said it was 16 to 18 inches, but it was really like 6.5.
Yeah, exactly.
Just average. Although Rolf had lost, it didn't really impede the sale of oil dowsing rods. In fact, scams were on the rise, and not just from pseudoscientific bullshit. See, in the Texas countryside, you had this perfect combination of lower educated landowners, these ranchers who were probably self-educated, hoping to make a fortune, and then you have shrewd investors and tacticians who can manipulate them into all kinds of nefarious schemes. Mm-hmm. And that brings us to the central character in our narrative. Silas Mason Newton was born in 1887 in Kentucky. He attained a bachelor's in philosophy at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, before transferring to Yale University's camp in Texas. Out of college, he got a job selling life insurance for the Amicable Life Insurance Company.
Oh.
For 20 years or so, Newton continued to live a relatively uneventful life, although one undoubtedly shadowed by the Great Depression. It's clear that Newton found himself in some kind of financial trouble after the stock market crash in 1929. Life insurance, which used to be a profitable business up until that point, kind of took a nosedive. With banks closing and hoarding on the rise, people, they just didn't have much use for insurance companies. A 1933 report showed 46% decline in company production, meaning that small insurance companies were folding, and only the larger ones were able to really sustain the financial hardship that was experienced at that time.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's how monopolies are born.
Oh,
Sad.
and in the same report from 1933, they have a whole section reporting criticism of, quote, high salaries of insurance executives. So
wow,
it's comforting to know that CEOs have learned nothing from the Great Depression.
Oh, yeah. No, nothing's changed.
Yeah. High salaries back then. They were like, you probably shouldn't have high salaries for these companies that are financially struggling. That's weird. This was in 1933. This is 90 years ago. They were like, you really shouldn't do that. That's really strange.
Yeah.
Nothing changed.
That's not surprising.
Right?
Yeah.
So Silas Newton likely felt the pinch of these declines. With a wife and son at home, he needed to be able to provide for his family. And I really, really wish that I could say he did something really noble and self-sacrificial and something like that. But no, he swindled a 74-year-old out of his life savings instead.
Oh, damn. Was this part of his insurance company deal, or?
Yeah. So according to a New York Times article from July of 1931, one of Newton's associates approached this poor retired man and talked up a stock deal that he'd made. And apparently, Newton had invested in the Southwestern Gas and Utilities Company. And they were in the midst of talks of like mergers and acquisitions, going to send them to the moon, just like GameStop. Right?
Yeah, right.
So the elderly man asked about, maybe I can purchase some stock myself if this company is going to go so well. And Newton said to him, oh yeah, I'll sell you some of my shares. Although when he said it, he was also like, oh, no, I don't want to part with my shares. They're going to be really valuable. But then he thought about it for a while and he was like, oh, I think I will after all. So he had that initial reluctance.
Yeah, that's smart.
You will find this as he's a central character here. The more we talk about him, the more you're going to be like, oh man, this guy knew the game.
Yeah.
He was a master manipulator.
Yeah, man. He dangled the carrot and then took it away a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, all in all, this unnamed man bought $25,000 of stock in 1931 using his entire life savings. And then shortly after that, he looked into the company and became suspicious of the entire deal. He brought it up to his attorney, who brought it up to the New Jersey police, who arrested Newton.
Oh, good for him. He went after him.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Newton and his second wife were living in Jersey at the time. That previous February, their home had been broken into and thieves had stolen $15,000 of jewelry.
Damn.
I don't know if that's true.
Oh, okay.
But if that's true, it gives a pretty clear motive for Newton to try to earn back his investment.
Okay.
But we will find time and time again that so much of what Newton claims is just a straight up lie that nothing he says can be trusted. This could all be circumstantial. The investment could have been legitimate, and Newton's intentions could have been genuine. I'd be more willing to give him a pass, but in my search of the New York Times archives, I found 2 other instances of exactly the same thing. One in 1934, where Newton was involved with the Benjamin C. Baker brokerage company, and one way back in 1929 involving the American-controlled oil fields company. By the way, the 1929 deal was considered a forgery that brought Newton over $400,000, which he had to return when he got found out.
Wow, did he go to prison?
No.
Wow.
In 1938, Newton showed up again, committing wire fraud and selling false stock statements. By that point, he was living in the Brown Palace Hotel in Denver, Colorado. And since his wire fraud occurred across multiple state lines, this crime put him on the FBI's radar. And they investigated him.
Still no prison, though.
That case was ultimately dropped, yeah.
Okay.
But that makes 4 separate instances of dishonest business in a decade. Mm-hmm. It's clear, I think, that Newton didn't have much integrity, probably because he sold it to the highest bidder. All of these reports refer to Silas Newton as an oil man, often a successful one, which is really strange because he doesn't seem to have much claim to any oil fields at the time. The first real connection Newton has to oil is in 1941, with the FBI reporting that he owned, quote, 3 small producing wells but no pipeline in Kansas. They estimate this brought him about $200 per month, or about $4,000 per month today. Not bad.
Not too bad.
Decent.
Yeah.
Now, according to the FBI's records, Newton was president of the Oriental Refining Company. I have no idea why they're called the Oriental Refining Company, but they were. They had apparently been bankrolled by J.H. Carpenter as an investor. The FBI believed that Carpenter owned the CBS building in New York City. I can't confirm this. The original CBS building was owned by the Vanderbilts until 1924 when they sold it to Juilliard. In 1939, CBS bought their current location at 52nd Street. It's possible that J.H. Carpenter was the original owner who sold it to CBS, but I can't confirm that. It also doesn't factor into the story at all. Just there's all of these things that surround Newton that are strange, and him trying to like boost himself and his image up higher than he actually is.
Right. Yeah. He's connected to these people.
Right. You're going to start to hear this over and over and over again. So get fucking used to it.
Okay.
Yeah. Either way, 1941, Newton had about $4,000 in liquid cash, some oil wells producing monthly income, and new prospects in mind. He's been in Colorado for a while. He's a fan of it out there, and he's very eager for a new drill site and more wells, oil wells. So he turned his attention to the Rangerly oil fields on the Colorado-Utah border. The Rangerly fields lie out in western Colorado, just south of a town called, seriously, Dinosaur.
Oh my goodness.
Coolest town name ever, Dinosaur. Yeah.
Is it called Dinosaur because they found dinosaurs there?
I'd assume so, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
At the time, that town was called Artesia, but they renamed it to Dinosaur.
Okay.
Since 1901, the region had been a point of interest for oil producers who spent about 30 years drilling with, we'd say, various success. Finally, the California company, who would later become Chevron, made headway and set up a well in 1933, which quickly became the most productive well of the time. Now, the oil company hadn't used dowsing to find their well, just good old-fashioned science. Yeah. The Rangerly oil field was located on what's called an anticline, which is a ridge of stratified rock. And this had long been known as a likely source for oil and was one of the reasons that different companies had been drilling there for the past 3 decades. In fact, the first discovery of oil at Rangerly dated all the way back to 1902, when Wagoner found oil on his property and was pissed off about it.
So this is where this guy's going.
This is where Newton's got his eyes set on this.
Okay.
Because this is the right property for him. He sees dollar signs in the ground out there. The California company dubbed the well Raven A1, and it was actually too productive. Like the price associated with drilling was high and the depression costs were too expensive. So it was like too expensive to operate the well for the amount of they had a bunch of excess oil and nothing to do with it.
Oh, wow. Still too early then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because also in the Depression, not so many people were buying cars.
Right.
So they capped the well for like a decade, and then World War II broke out. And then all of a sudden, we needed oil for the war effort.
Yay, war!
Yay, war.
Money!
And so the California company reopened Raven A1, and the price of oil skyrocketed, and they became this highly successful company.
And then it's like, why stop having wars? I mean, geez.
Yeah.
There's so much to gain. Yeah.
In the meantime, oil companies like the Texas Company, or Texaco, and Stanolind, today BP, had their eyes on the site. So they bought up as much land as they could, gambling on future oil price drops, high profit margins, that kind of thing. By 1943, the area was a major oil producer, and by 1949, almost 500 wells were established in this stretch of land. And that's where Silas Newton's like, I gotta be there. I want in on that. But no one wants to sell their land to him because it's so profitable.
Yeah, why would you?
So finally, Newton struck a deal with a man named John Bockhold, who was an independent Kansas oil man who had debt and needed to offload some of his property to pay it. So Newton leased Bockhold's land with a little bit of cash up front and promised, I'm going to pay off the remainder of the $250,000 debt with all of the money I'm going to make off my oil.
So Silas Newton is going to help the owner pay off his debt.
No. So what happened was Newton leased this owner's land. Newton leased Bockhold's land for a little bit of money up front. Bockhold's like, well, you still owe me the rest of this money for this land. And Newton's like, oh, don't worry, I'll pay it to you.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to get you the $250,000 that I owe you. Let me just establish some wells here. And then once the oil's flowing, the money's going to come in.
Damn, so like a little piece of that land was $250,000?
Uh-huh.
Damn, that guy must have been in a mountain of debt if a small piece of that was $250,000.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So Newton partnered with the Wasatch Oil Company, and he finally got his first strike in February of 1945. And he was very quick to spin this publicly in his favor. Dan Plazak notes that the steamboat pilot out of Steamboat Springs credited only Silas Newton and the, quote, Newton Oil Company as the driller, leaving out Wasatch. But Newton's success was very short-lived. He drilled 2 more wells himself, both of which turned up dry. And that was like something of an anomaly, given how successful all the other producers had been in the region. Newton's failures were so surprising that the Associated Press noted that Newton was the first of 71 wells drilled to turn up dry.
Oh, that's such bad luck. That's what he gets for all his swindling, though, you know?
Seriously, yeah.
Karma.
Yeah. Newton, somehow, he was like an anti-magnet for oil. Like, no matter what he did, he couldn't get a good strike out there.
You should use him as a dowsing rod and like the opposite.
You just grab him by the legs and point him at the ground.
Right.
Newton continued drilling with limited success. And by 1947, he'd been drilling for 3 years, had 4 producing wells and 4 failures, plus the initial one, which he only had partial strike on, because it was partnered with Wasatch. Of his 4 successful wells, 2 of them were low yield and only produced like a fraction of what they should. And that's a really, really bad oil company in the region. Mm-hmm. Like it's a terrible record.
It's a terrible record.
So Newton found himself in a bind. He still owed money to John Bockhold, who was expecting the high-producing wells that Newton had promised him. He's watching all these other companies around him just churning out hundreds of barrels a day. And even his oil-producing wells are suboptimal and are likely going to turn to water soon. He's got nothing left. He's got debts piling up. And so he sold off a portion of his lease to Stanolind, the oil company Stanolind. John Bockhold found out about this and immediately sued, claiming that the $67,000 Newton made should have gone to him instead because Newton didn't actually own the land, he was just leasing it.
Yeah, man. He's like subleasing.
Right.
Yeah.
Bockhold won because of course he did, and left Newton in even more debt because he'd spent the money already and had no way of making it back. And he knows now that he can't sell the land. Facing ruin and failure, Newton needed a new strategy. And it would come in the form of a remarkable incident 600 miles south of his failed oil experiment on a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. I am sure our listeners don't need me to explain this, but in July of 1947, something crashed on a field in Corona, New Mexico. Debris, including metallic silver sheeting, rubber and wooden beams, lay scattered across almost a square mile of W.W. Mac Brazel's ranch. Within 3 days, the U.S. Air Force swarmed the site, setting up a massive recovery operation and locking down all communication, evidence, and reporting on the incident.
Do, 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 do. Meow, 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 meow. Okay, good.
This is Roswell. So, the scope of the crash at Roswell is much, much, much too long to be included in this series, and I promise we will do a gigantic series devoted entirely to Roswell very soon. But what's important here are a few key pieces of information regarding this story. Okay, prepare your brain because I'm going to give you an info dump and a bunch of word salad.
Cool. This is like living with him normally. Okay. I'm always prepared for this.
Okay, so this is what happened. Something crashed on Brazel's ranch, right? Mm-hmm. First, Brazel took some of the debris he found in his field to the Corona Sheriff's Office, where the incident was referred to Major Jesse Marcel. And this resulted in the famous photo of Major Marcel posing with the metal sheeting. The following day, the Air Force released a statement on the incident saying that a flying disc had been recovered in Roswell. This was corrected the next day by the U.S. Army, which now reported that it was a weather balloon. The debris was cleared from Brazel's ranch and business as usual returned to Roswell. That's essentially what happened there. So in Roswell, something crashed. He brought it to the sheriff's office. It got referred to Major Jesse Marcel. First, they called it a flying disc. Then they called it a weather balloon and took everything away.
That is not what I imagine the Roswell incident to be at all.
How do you imagine it?
I imagine it to be like a flying saucer crashed on someone's property. The government found bodies in the saucer, set up like a barrier, whatever you call it.
Right.
And took it to an underground bunker and continued to do experiments on it. And the whole time the public knows. The whole time the public is aware of it. Like, they don't know the whole story, but the public is alien crazy and knows about it. That's my understanding.
That is the narrative. And that's what we're going to unpack as we go through this series.
Yeah, it's astonishing how it's so not what I think.
Yeah, but that's what actually happened. Now, that was July 7th, 1947. Now, on July 11th, 4 days after the initial balloon report, a second disc allegedly crashed at Twin Falls, Idaho. And this was quickly found out to be a hoax perpetrated by a group of industrious teenagers who created their own disc out of various electronic parts and a clear plexiglass dome.
Were they trying to create an alien spacecraft?
They were trying to create a hoax.
Did people know about, the public know about aliens back then? Were they alien crazy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. I just remember reading about Roswell and how, like, it took a really long time for the public to catch on that, or to believe that it was an alien.
Oh, I kind of see what you're saying. Did they believe that they were alien, like that it was an extraterrestrial object?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
That I understand now. No. The public did not at any point really believe that there was anything extraterrestrial associated with the UFO crash at Roswell, at least not at this time.
Right, okay.
And if they did, it wasn't in the larger cultural zeitgeist.
Right.
All that there was flying saucer, quote, quote, flying saucer crash. Strange object in the sky. Remember Kenneth Arnold, who had seen something over Mount Rainier, Washington? Mm-hmm. He was the original origin. His sighting came about 2 weeks before the Roswell crash. But he did not report it as extraterrestrial either, just weird.
Right, because at the time people were thinking about enemy aircraft.
They just didn't know what it was. Yeah. So 2 weeks later, Raymond Palmer, the editor of Fate magazine, paid Kenneth Arnold to investigate a reported saucer crash at Maury Island near Puget Sound in Washington. Arnold, of course, had already sparked this saucer craze a month earlier. And for a full discussion on this incident, check out our George Adamski series. We talk about Kenneth Arnold, all of that.
It's wacky.
It's wacky. But bringing in Arnold, who had no real credentials besides seeing some saucers once, was obviously a publicity move. Raymond Palmer was trying to get this guy to become the authority on flying saucers and unexplained crafts.
And again, this is not aliens yet,
just
right?
weird shit in the sky.
Just weird stuff.
Right.
Nobody's talking about aliens yet. Okay.
But unfortunately, the Maury Island incident also turned out to be a hoax perpetrated by some guys who wanted to capitalize on the saucer craze and get their names in the science fiction magazine. And so Arnold disappeared from the public eye after this, and Palmer and Fate, they went on to other things. As a side note, Gray Barker, a proponent of the Men in Black mythology and Mothman, would later pick up the Maury Island story and run with it in his own reporting about government cover-ups, conspiracies, and UFOs. Gray Barker was, of course, a very good friend of UFO prankster James Moseley and a hoaxer in his own right. All of that is to say that flying saucers, not necessarily aliens, but flying saucers, particularly crashed ones, were very present in America's collective consciousness at the time. Silas Newton definitely heard about it because he immediately started concocting his own story. Already well-versed in cons and deception, Newton saw a path out of his financial trouble, one that involved combining his own experience with the oil business with the hot topic of ships from another world and advanced technology. And it's with Newton's fantastic story and otherworldly device that we will pick up next time.
Ooh, exciting.
So this is it. This is where we're starting to get into the meat of all of this.
And it's interesting to, this is why I love this, because you're not just telling a story about a crash and what people found and theories. You're getting into the origin of the person who came up with this idea.
Oh, yeah.
And he's very questionable.
He's very questionable. And you will find, as we go through, that so much of this originates with the con of Silas Newton and another man who we haven't met named Leo Gebauer. These two guys and their con literally to get Newton out of debt. That was what they wanted to do. Just get Silas Newton out of the debt that he had put himself in. Sparks what I believe is the most prolific hoax in human history.
Just to get a guy out of debt.
Yeah.
Money's powerful.
It really is.
And
yeah, it really is.
It makes people do crazy stuff.
And it's also really wild because it's one of those stories where you see it already. He's in financial trouble and he keeps digging deeper because he keeps running other cons rather than just like doing legitimate work. You know?
Yeah,
He keeps like trying to come up with zany schemes to get himself out of this shit and keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah. There was something psychological there that I'm not a therapist, so I could never figure it out. But
Right.
but like there's always this interesting thing where it's like, why don't you just get a job?
Right.
Or because it's so much easier than going into than being a criminal because you're gonna get caught. I mean,
Right.
just a moment, it's gonna happen. So
I do think that eventually you hit a point where you're so far in debt that a job isn't enough. And therefore
Sure.
you have to go somewhere else.
yeah,
You know, he needed thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get out of debt, which is more than anyone could possibly make at that time, just doing like a regular job or
Yeah.
selling life insurance or whatever.
there's that, and then I think that's most of it. But then I also think like if you get into the habit of being a criminal, like it's hard to get under the thumb of somebody in a
Yeah.
legit way. It's
Yeah,
hard
I
to
think so.
face yourself every day because you're like because even though you're a criminal, you're kind of your own boss. You know, like you're paving your way. It's the American dream. So
Also, like, Silas Newton he was like built for this, man. Like, he manipulated everybody. You're gonna see, he manipulates fucking everybody.
but this is the thing, man. He's got a trail of bodies behind him.
Oh, yeah.
And yet he still manages to manipulate people.
Well, it was also a glorious time where there wasn't so much reporting, you know? And we were still... back in, the Old West, right? You would, like, fuck up a town and then you would just leave and go to the other town and nobody knew.
Yeah.
And it's still sort of that way here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's
Seems
been
like
investigated by the FBI. They looked into him a little bit, but he basically just wandered to another town and kept doing his shit.
Wow. Where's that intrepid reporter that can jump in and blow the whole thing wide open?
Wait until episode 3.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's on his way. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He's on his way, but it takes a long time and things get really deep before we get there. It's easy, I think, looking back on all of it when you have the complete picture, it's easy to see how Silas Newton had put his claws so deep in the cultural zeitgeist with all of this. And his manipulation was so expansive that it's no surprise that people are still regurgitating his stories to this day.
Even though we know better.
Even though we know. And we knew in the 50s.
Yeah.
We knew by, I think, 1953 that this was bullshit.
That's the thing about, even though you have all the information in front of you, like you'd think with the dawn of the internet, the dawn of all this information we have, there'd be less conspiracies, but I think there are more.
Oh, it's the opposite. Yeah.
It's insane how much more we have. Yeah.
Yeah. It's there is more information, and so there are more pathways to create conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And it gets harder and harder as you muddle through to be like, what's real and what's not.
Yeah. Because everything's muddied now.
And then you have companies that prey on that, and you have like the algorithm. I had this weird thought today that is, how does the algorithm that is being built on your preferences even know that those are actually your preferences if it just keeps showing you the same thing? You know what I mean? Like,
Because I think it can listen and give at the same time, right? Like it doesn't just, like it continues to listen because you're the one outputting information into search bars.
Yeah, but it keeps being extremely narrow. To give an example of this, let's say that I start watching cat videos on Instagram and then they start sending me cat, toys and food and all of this stuff because that's like the funnel of the algorithm, right? When my cat dies and I stop doing that, they're still going to send me that stuff and I'm still going to click on it because now that is the ecosystem that they have created for me. because I don't have choices outside the cat choices, because that's what they've been giving to me for so much time.
And
you know what I mean?
And you're clicking on it. You're still clicking on it.
Sure, yeah.
Which I think feeds into it.
I guess it's because you're clicking on it.
If you're engaging in it, then I think it works. I think
Right.
it continues to work on itself.
Yeah, I guess.
But I don't know. I don't know the answer because I don't know how this works really.
But it's weird too, because like when I started researching the Gaia stuff,
Yeah.
when I was talking about the Nazca mummies and the aliens and Jaime Maussan and all of that stuff, like then I started getting stuff from Gaia, which is hilarious. But at the same time, I'm like, how doesn't this become narrow? You know, now you're suddenly feeding me Gaia information just because I'm researching for this podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm articulating this well.
I know. I think you are. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know the answer, but it's interesting. I think that. But if you put in new things into the search window, I think it starts to give you a new algorithm. Like
I think no. I think they're still colored. I think if you're using the same search functionality, if I'm going through Instagram, it's still the same stuff.
So
It's app based.
for example, if I decide to look for acupuncturists in my area,
Yes.
and I really look into all these acupuncture
Right.
blogs and things like that and learn about it, and then I Google back pain,
Right.
I am going to probably get acupuncture
Exactly.
solutions.
Exactly.
And not
Yes.
science-based, medical.
Right. Because it narrows.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess that's the nature of the algorithm.
I guess that's how it works. But hey, if any algorithm experts are listening, what's our freaking email address?
slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, write in. Let us know.
Yeah, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com. Send me all your angry emails. Maybe not from this one, but very soon, all of my UFO enthusiast listeners will be sending me angry emails. I welcome them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I want aliens to be real. That'd be freaking cool. So
I want aliens to be real, but we're going to talk about how alien crashes might not be real.
just because, this one isn't real, doesn't mean we don't have, aliens living out in the galaxies far, far away, right?
A long time ago.
A long time ago. Yeah.
Well, there you go. So that is part 1 of Aztec. This is going to be a big series.
Yay.
Travel along with us. We're going to have a great time.
Get in your alien spaceship and drive along. Meow, meow, meow.
Amazing.
However it goes.
All right.
Thanks
Awesome.
for listening.
Thanks for listening. Be safe out there. Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the Paranormal History Podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways to show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram @slayingmonsterspodcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.